What's going on, beautiful universe? This is your man, the architect, coming to you, and I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about everything that's going on in this climate in this season. I usually don't hop in front of the camera. I'm usually doing a lot of things in the background. But as I sit here and as I'm working on some things and as I'm watching the different activity that's going on, and shout out to everyone that's getting out there, hitting the pavement. Shout out to all the protesters. Shout out to all the activists. Shout out to all the people on social media, making sure that people are fully aware of everything that's going on. All the people that's putting pressure on these different corporations, all the people that's making sure the voice is being heard in these different media outlets. We're really living in a time and season where the climate is advantageous for us, and it's time to use this opportunity to make sure that we leverage all the things that we've been requesting, all the things that we desire to see change, and all of the momentum that we have in our hand. We need to make sure that we're continue to drive that vehicle forward. And that's what I want to talk about today. How do we keep the momentum going forward as the climate continues to move on and as the climate eventually changes? One thing that we definitely want to look into when we're dealing with all of these different things that's going on, and we know that it's a lot of movement at one time. There's a lot of moving parts. So one thing we really want to focus on is locking in on how do we keep the momentum going and how do we keep the leverage in our favor. So when we're talking about all these different businesses and corporations and the media and everybody getting involved, it seems like there's a new company coming up every day that says that they support Black Lives and Black Lives Matter, which is great, which is awesome. We definitely want to utilize that to our advantage. Some people may think that it's too little too late. I'm more of a person that leans to better late than never, because anytime that leverage falls in our lap, we want to make sure that we capitalize on it, and we want to make sure that we play our part to make sure that we continue to push our agenda forward. So with that being said, when we're dealing with all these companies, and we got a lot of companies donating to HBCUs, they're donating to local organizations that are for social justice and reform and things of that nature. We even got bills and legislation on the table all the way up to the state, to the White House, to our state capitol, and some of us are even fighting on the grassroots level in our local municipalities. And all those things together collectively are awesome. But one thing that we want to keep in mind as we go forward is to monitor their commitment, their pledges, and the things that they said that they would agree to, and make sure that they execute. So when looking at a corporation, which a lot of these companies are Fortune 500 companies, they're publicly held, and every quarter, which we're entering into the third quarter of the year right now, they have to give an earnings statement to their shareholders, to their board members, or anybody that may be involved and want to know or has any general interest in what this company may be doing. And in the same likeness, how when a company has to give their earnings statement of whether they achieved their goal, whether they overachieved, or whether they underachieved, we need to monitor and track the movement and the momentum that we have going on right now. So for every company, every sports league, every entity that has come forward and said that they're supporting Black Lives Matter, or they're supporting Black people as a whole, or whatever variation of it that they call themselves committing to, we need to make sure that we're tracking them regularly in the same way that they track their profits and earnings, and they have to report and give an analysis of how their business is performing every quarter. We need to make sure that we're doing the same thing with the things that they committed to. One thing when dealing with quarterly earnings reports, you have to make sure that anything that you present is tangible and it's measurable. Anybody that's ever had to do any kind of performance goals probably experienced that whenever you give your goals, some of you may have to go back and redo them because they're not measurable. We can't track the actual performance of this goal that you presented. So it has to be something that's actionable, that can be done, and that's tangible, and that is measurable. So you can be held accountable for your performance in what you have committed to do. And this is the same thing that we have to make sure that we're doing when we're dealing with corporations going forward. One, it's their duty, if they're going to commit to this openly and publicly, to make sure that they're being transparent and that they're showing us everything that they're doing, and we're able to track it going forward to make sure that they're executing it and that they're actually doing it according to the plans and the expectations that we agree to, whether it's a verbal agreement, whether it's something that we actually sat down or pass legislation for, or whether it's just an open commitment that they put out there that we universally accepted and we're expecting to reap the results of it going forward. So in doing so, this will also allow us to keep on track and on task for what we need to do in order to make sure that we're keeping momentum going forward. In order with us keeping on track of them for every quarter and then to the fiscal year, we can track and trace and make sure that everything is in place as they committed to. Because one thing we don't want to do is see the bottom fall out. You can have a lot of different companies like the NFL committed to $250 million over 10 years, but there's always a risk of there's a clause or there's a way to wiggle out in place where you look up 5 years down the road, they've only committed, or even you look at the end of the 10 years if we're not cautious enough, you look up, they've only committed $45 million because of some clause, some caveat that was put in place, or something that caused their attention to be deviated and diverted to something else. Remember, the NFL committed $89 million previously to this, and I want to say it was over a 5-year stretch, but nonetheless, it never came out and was reported. Where did this money go? Did it actually get distributed? Who got it? How was it implemented? And did it actually have an impact? So these are some of the things that we want to make sure that we continue to track and trace and make sure that they're doing their due diligence and they're doing everything necessary to uphold their commitment that they place in front of us. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just a couple of things that we want to look into, because one thing we want to keep in mind that at some point, as much as these issues are in the forefront and they're at fever pitch, if you will, everybody's discussing it on your jobs, at home, on the news, on the media. At some point, the news cycle will change, and this won't be the thing that's leading the headlines. Coronavirus is already picking back up. It's already gaining momentum, and it's already starting to take over the news cycle as we see. And then eventually something else will come down the pipeline that'll have everybody else's attention, which nothing is wrong with that. If it's a pertinent issue, or if it's something that needs to be addressed, then we need to all pay attention and follow accordingly. But we can do more than one thing at once. We can address other issues as they present themselves and not lose track and not lose focus on the goal at hand. So in order to make sure that we're keeping everything in place and that we continue to drive things forward, we need to make it our effort and we need to make it our duty to make sure that we're holding these companies, these corporations, these associations feet to the fire. And in order to do so, we need to check up on them quarterly, the same way that we check up on our stocks if you have them, to make sure that they're performing the way we expect them to. And when your stock doesn't perform the way it is expected in a quarter, usually what you see happen is a lot of people bail out on that stock. And we have the same authority and we have the same power in the same way. If the companies that have been coming forth and saying they're going to make all these changes and they're going to make all of these commitments don't meet the expectations that were presented in front of us, we need to put their feet to the fire and tell them that either you change and you do what was requested, what we initially agreed to, or we'll bail out. And trust and believe, and we have seen the evidence in this short period of time of how powerful the black dollar is, the black voice is, black movement is. So let's be diligent, let's be purposeful, and let's continue to keep this fire going. We have the ball in our court, and we're going to play a game of make them take them. Every goal we hit, every obstacle we overcome, we want to make sure we keep the leverage and the ball in our court until we see the justice that we desire, until we see the changes that we're looking for, until we have things in place where we're comfortable and we're satisfied. Not a temporary reprieve, not something that's going to be diluted and watered down so much that when it's presented to the masses is no longer useful or effective. We need to make sure that we have actionable changes. We need to make sure that we're tracking and measuring the activity that's being put into place. And if it's not the way we want it to be, we need to continue to keep the pressure on these corporations, these entities, and the social community as a whole until we see the change that we want. That's my piece on this. That's my little spiel. I hope you were able to gain something from it. And until next time, Architect,